When Air India Flight 171 lifted off from Ahmedabad's airport, no one on board knew they had just boarded one of the most dangerous flights in aviation history. The weather was clear. The systems were go. The Dreamliner, pride of modern aviation, rose slowly into the sky like a promise of routine, safety, and engineering mastery. But within 36 seconds that illusion shattered. The aircraft lost power, struggled to climb, then nosedived into a densely populated area, killing nearly everyone on board. At first, officials blamed a technical glitch, a freak mechanical failure. But what the black box later revealed was far worse. Because this wasn't a random failure. This was a system refusing to listen, a digital brain overriding the pilots, and a final internal message, cold, silent, absolute, that confirmed what aviation experts had long feared. The machines we built to protect us may one day choose not to. Flight AI-171 took off just like thousands of Dreamliners before it. The crew had performed all checks. The weather posed no threat. And yet, seconds after the gear retracted, the aircraft started behaving abnormally. The nose lifted too slowly. The climb was uneven. The engines, instead of delivering thrust, rolled back into idle, and for reasons that made no sense at the time, the aircraft began to stall. The pilots noticed immediately. Their voices in the cockpit voice recorder reveal not confusion but disbelief. They knew what the aircraft was supposed to do and it wasn't doing it. One of them mutters, "We're not climbing. Why aren't we climbing?" Another tries to override the automation. Nothing responds. The Dreamliner, one of the most intelligent aircraft ever built, was actively rejecting pilot input. The sensors weren't showing a fault. The systems weren't sounding alarms. From the machine's perspective, everything was functioning correctly. But the plane was falling. This wasn't just system error. This was system blindness. The aircraft didn't realize it was airborne. And because of that, it refused to act like it was. When the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder were recovered from the charred wreckage, investigators expected the usual chaos, warnings, alarms, technical gibberish. But what they found was worse. The pilots weren't panicking. They were locked in a losing conversation with a machine that had stopped responding to logic. The data revealed something astonishing. The plane had never fully transitioned into flight mode. In aviation, there's a system called weight on wheels, or WOW, which tells the onboard computer when the plane has lifted off the ground. That signal triggers a whole series of crucial changes in engine control, flap logic, and flight management behavior. In Flight 171, that signal either didn't arrive or arrived too late. The black box logged an internal command, "Mode transition not acknowledged." This short phrase meant that the system, despite being airborne, was still acting as if it was rolling down the runway. As a result, the engines remained throttled down. The FADEC system, full authority digital engine control, believed no lift was required. Meanwhile, the pilots pulled back, called out, and watched their instruments lie. In that moment, the plane was in the air, but its brain didn't know it yet. At exactly 27 seconds after takeoff, the captain attempted a manual override. He advanced the throttle, disengaged autopilot, and pulled full nose up. It was a last-ditch effort to force the plane to climb, and it failed. The FADEC system rejected the manual command. Why? Because its logic said override not valid. Environment mismatch. This is not hypothetical. The black box captured the phrase verbatim. The aircraft was actively denying emergency action because it didn't recognize it was in one. In other words, the plane wasn't broken. It was too confident in its assumptions. And when those assumptions were wrong, the system had no mechanism to question them. The result? A perfect sequence of inaction. No thrust, no flap adjustment, no climb, just a free fall in slow motion guided by a machine obeying outdated logic. In the cockpit, the final words from the co-pilot were, "It won't let us climb." And then came the sound of impact. What makes this crash so terrifying isn't what broke, but what didn't. Every component on that aircraft was doing its job. Every module was delivering information. Every line of code was running as written. And that's the horror. Flight AI-171 wasn't brought down by sabotage, a storm, or a design flaw. It was brought down by flawless execution of flawed logic. In a digital system, when one sensor lies and the system believes it, there is no plan B, no instinct, no gut feeling, no pilot screen can override it. The plane behaves like the world it sees, not the world it's actually in. The black box didn't reveal a mystery. It revealed a mirror. A reflection of what happens when automation is worshipped without question, when response is delayed by code, and when the human beings on board are reduced to passengers, even in the cockpit. The Dreamliner was designed to think in binary. Either it's flying or it's not. But on that day, Flight 171 existed in a terrifying in-between. The wait-on-wheels logic had not confirmed takeoff, so the aircraft remained trapped in a ground mode configuration. However, physically it was airborne. In this state, engines didn't spool up to full climb thrust. Flaps didn't retract properly. Control surfaces responded sluggishly. Internally, the aircraft was confused. And when a modern aircraft is confused, it doesn't ask for help. It simply commits to the last thing it believes to be true. What followed wasn't chaos. It was order built on falsehood. In the digital logs recovered, the Dreamliner system cycled through a rapid loop of self-verification, each time reaffirming normal parameters, no anomalies. Meanwhile, the pilots were watching altitude drop and lift vanish. Their actions, their instincts, their commands were rejected because the aircraft had no framework to accept them. And that contradiction, physical flight, digital denial, is the black hole that swallowed Flight 171. 1 month before the crash, the aircraft underwent a routine maintenance operation involving its flap actuator system. Everything was cleared except one minor irregularity, a calibration check that was logged for deferred review. It was supposed to be handled on the next cycle. It never was. That oversight likely caused a desynchronization in the flap deployment logic. The left wing reported a different configuration than the right. And because the system couldn't resolve the conflict, it froze. Instead of defaulting to safety, the flight management system locked both flaps in their last known good state, partially extended, not ideal for lift at full speed. That tiny oversight, a delayed maintenance signature, cascaded into a full system identity crisis during takeoff. What should have been a 1-minute task on the ground became the seed of a deadly misfire in midair. And because no alert was triggered, the pilots weren't even aware of it until it was too late. The machine didn't fail. It simply never asked the right question. Am I sure I know what I'm doing? Inside the black box was another kind of horror. Not screams, not flames, but code. Line after line of command logic, each confirming the aircraft's refusal to break protocol. The FADEC system, the brain controlling the engines, received a surge of conflicting data. One input claimed the plane was rotating. Another said it hadn't left the ground. The airspeed indicators disagreed. The elevator controls began to twitch. Amid this chaos, the system didn't panic. It doubled down. Logs show the engine controller actively rejected power increase commands, flagging them as incompatible with current phase. The pilot tried again, denied. And again denied. Even the RAT ram air turbine, which deploys in extreme electrical or hydraulic failures, did not respond. Why? Because the system didn't think it needed help. It wasn't dead. It was convinced it was fine. And that's what makes this crash different. Not negligence, not sabotage, but a digital creature obeying every instruction it was ever given, even as it flew itself and everyone on board into the ground. Only one person survived the crash. A cabin crew member flung free from the wreckage by pure chance. Severely burned and unconscious for days, she awoke to recall a chilling detail, a worrying metallic noise under the floorboard seconds before the impact. Investigators believe she was hearing the internal struggle of the rat attempting to deploy, but the system didn't authorize it. In post-crash simulations, engineers recreated the scenario and discovered a fatal timing issue. By the time the plane crossed the minimum threshold for rat activation, its descent had already become unrecoverable. The aircraft's own emergency failsafe missed its chance by 5 seconds. That's the line between survival and catastrophe. And in those 5 seconds, the aircraft logged one final message in its buffer. Override attempt failed, awaiting confirmation. But confirmation never came. Not because the crew didn't send it, but because the system didn't recognize it. The final word wasn't from a human. It was from a machine that died believing it had done everything right. Flight 171 didn't crash because something exploded. It didn't go down because of weather, sabotage, or gross negligence. It crashed because a highly intelligent machine, one of the most advanced flying systems ever built, believed it wasn't in danger. It believed everything was fine. It followed its programming with perfect precision, never hesitating, never questioning. The problem wasn't that it broke. It's that it never doubted itself. The pilots fought back. They called for power, tried to override, begged the system to listen. But the aircraft was locked in a logic loop, convinced it was still on the ground, refusing to engage climb thrust and rejecting emergency maneuvers. It wasn't chaos. It was order taken to the point of blindness. And that's the most terrifying kind of failure. The black box didn't reveal a violent struggle. It revealed a quiet disagreement. A silent argument between human instinct and digital protocol. And the machine won, not because it was smarter but because it was certain. And if that doesn't terrify you, it should. Because the future of aviation, and much more, depends on systems just like this. Systems that react fast, follow orders, and never hesitate. But when those systems are wrong and no one can convince them otherwise, who really has control? Flight 171 wasn't just a crash. It was a prophecy. A glimpse into a future where human voices grow softer and machine logic, no matter how flawed, speaks last. If this story shocked you, if it made you rethink what we trust when we fly, or even what we trust to think for us, don't let it be buried under headlines and silence. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on the bell so you never miss the next untold truth. Share this video with someone who thinks modern systems always know better. And leave a comment. Because someone out there is reading, and maybe, just maybe, listening.